Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Faisel Sayed,
And I'm Dr. Dan McCarter.
and you're listening to Faisel and Friends, where we believe access to primary care is a right, not a privilege. Today, we're talking to Dr. Steve Bierman, physician, inventor, and author, about hypnotic healing. It's not what you think. Let's dive right in. Hi, Dr. Dan.
Hey, Faisel. Good to see you.
It is always good to see you, Dr. Dan. I'm so excited about today's conversation with Dr. Steve Bierman. Dr. Bierman, welcome to our show.
Thank you both. It's great to be here.
It was such an honor to meet you at the FMEC conference. Both I got to a little preview during the Innovators Network, and then to hear your keynote was absolutely fascinating. But before we get into some of the exciting things that you've been doing, and really what you're sharing more now than ever before, I want to know your backstory. I want to know, why was it that you pursued medicine and the story behind that?
Very good. Well, I'm third generation MD. My grandfather was a family practice physician or a general practitioner, as they called it then, in East St. Louis during the Depression. And my father, ophthalmologist, also out of St. Louis. And so, of course, I was born into this tradition, and there must have been quiet expectations. They were never laying on me uh, expressly, but I'm sure I felt those. Uh, it was in college, I remember that I came into conflict with that program and realized I'd really like to be a writer. But then I thought, yeah, but you've never seen anyone born or anyone die, and what are you going to write about? I realized that's not really the right way to reason through that, but that's how I did it. And so I felt drawn to medicine, profoundly drawn to it. I've always, I think, really cared about uh, myself, but other people in almost equal measure. And uh, and so I was really fortunate. It was baby boomers coming through. I applied and got accepted to Northwestern University School of Medicine. Um, that's a great school. I owe them a lot. I feel very grateful. But as I'm sure many of your listeners have experienced or will experience, when I announced that I was going into family practice, heads would shake and people would bemoan the choice and tell me I was throwing away a brilliant academic career and so forth. But I'll tell you this, when I was a young boy, uh, we were driving along a surface street in Pacific Palisades where I grew up, and a motorcycle accident had occurred, and the motorcycle driver had a broken wrist. My dad, an ophthalmologist, got out of the car, pulled out his black bag from the trunk, and went over and took care of this guy. And that made a really deep impression on me. From that time, certainly on, I wanted to be the kind of doctor who, in essence, could remain versatile and treat the broad range of human maladies, so that when it came time to choose between specializing, going into a field where there was certainly less uncertainty and a greater chance of being, quote, an expert, versus being a generalist with massive uncertainty, but also the opportunity to help broadly, not just specifically. I was so drawn to it. So I went to UCSD Family Practice Program, very young program at the time, brought me to San Diego where I wanted to live and surf. And I began uh, my 3 years in family practice there at UCSD. What happened though was, I don't know if you know this part of the story, but uh, at the end of that 3 years, although it was a remarkable program with great people, and I felt competent in terms of the requisite knowledge you're supposed to have before you enter family practice, I felt really incompetent in the other things that make a doctor a healer.
Hmm.
Um, I knew that most of my patients would be coming with physical complaints, but often physical complaints that were driven, at least in part, by psychological causes. And though I'd done plenty of psychiatry in my various rotations, uh, and worked the clinic with good counseling and oversight in the clinic, I just knew I wasn't ready. I didn't understand what was going on. And I saw myself and my resident colleagues making errors
Hmm.
that were just obvious on the face of it to me. Um, and so I took the coward's way out, let's say, and ran into emergency medicine, where I practiced as a full-time board certified, got my boards in that too, physician at Scripps Encinitas for 20 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that's a place where you can go and use all the skills that you've acquired as a family doc and and feel very, very confident doing it without anyone challenging whether you've really met the mark, because these are acute illnesses that require often rapid interventions that are quick and circumscribed. And so it was a great place to run from my doubts, self-doubts, doubts about the broad understanding of what causes symptoms and disease in medicine. Fortunately, it didn't end there. For various reasons we can get into, I took up neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis, and that led me to open a private practice here in Del Mar for medical hypnosis, which I've had for 30 plus years. And so my pursuits of understanding what's really going on, what really makes people sick, what really makes people well, I was able to pursue in that office to test in sort of the laboratory of the emergency room, and ultimately to rise to a level of competence that made me much more comfortable than I was, of course, those 20 years before when I ran from family medicine.
Wow.
That's my story in a nutshell.
Wow. Where were you? You know, I mean, seeing you now and speaking with you now, you're probably one of the most intentional people I know with your words and your actions. But when you were younger, did you have like a predisposition to that? I mean, you said that you were interested in being a writer. Were you intentional at that time with your words? I mean, talking about syncing with the breathing and even the voice and all. Was that something that just came naturally to you from when you were younger?
Absolutely not. I would say my childhood model, which I ran on until I cut that cord, um, didn't prepare me for that at all. It was much more confrontational and um, assertive or authoritarian rather than, let's say, permissive and subtle. It was really the study of, I would say, Milton Erickson, Ericksonian hypnosis, and the distillation of Erickson's works through the minds of John Grinder and Richard Bandler that got me started down the road I'm on now. And the reinforcement that comes from pursuing that avenue is the reinforcement of seeing people actually get well, actually respond. And so anyone can do what I'm doing. It just takes sort of segmental practice. You know, you pick something you want to work on, rapport, or permissive language, or eliminating mandates, or whatever, whatever aspect of the art you wish to practice. And you go in for a day or a week and you focus on that. What I learned is this may this may surprise you, but what I learned was if I took the various skills I was cultivating as part of my so-called hypnotic technique, which I hope we get into because I don't want your listeners to understand that as entailing trance. It does not.
Right.
But I found that if I transferred those various skills into my normal life, speaking more permissively,
Hmm.
paying attention to rapport with whoever the interlocutor is, uh, if I practice that all day long, at home, at work, my results, meaning the flow of the conversation, the level of agreement, the degree of compliance, and so forth, improve.